In last lecture, we have talked about memory in bigger detail. In this lecture, we'll continue with another additional information lecture. We'll continue with the memory and we'll be talking about how we are storing values in the memory. Okay, so let's start here in a test.sol and let's create here an array of 3 items. I will be storing some numbers into the array. Okay, so simply create here new variable will be type of the uint of the 3 items. So it will be array of 3 items like this. And let's say here will be uint of 8 bits. We'll be storing their small numbers, uint 8. Okay, and let's write here, it's stored in the memory, and let's call the variable items. Perfect. And let's store their numbers, let's say 1, 2, and 3, and don't forget about the semicolon. Okay, you will have here warning because you're not using the memory. These items actually, they are unused. You're not using them anywhere in your code. You are just providing the values to this variable. But no worry about that. We can save it and we can copy this line of code and we'll go back to Remix. Okay, so here you can scroll up, you can stop debugging. If you're still debugging, you can go back to your files here like this, and let's write here these lines of code memory. Perfect. Let's save it. You will have your still warning, no worry. You don't need to worry about it. Okay, let's create here, we can create here a breakpoint on this line, but yeah, we can do it also later. For now, what we need to do, we need to compile, deploy, execute function, test. Okay, so in the left menu, let's go to compile tab, and to this deploy tab, let's go to compile tab, and let's click here, compile. Perfect. Now let's go to deploy tab. Let's remove the previous contract, click here, trash icon. Now let's click here, deploy. Okay, now let's open the contract. I'll clear it out, and let's provide here value. Let's say value 2, doesn't really matter. Let's click here, test. This should send a transaction, and we can click here, debug. Perfect. Now we are in the debug window, and I will click on this line here, 16. So it's selected, and I will click here, jump into the next breakpoint. So this arrow here. This will get me to this line here. Now let's notice here, as previously, our free memory pointer 0x80 as 0x40. This means the new memory location will be allocated at a 0x80, and I will be storing them respectively in the chunks of 32 bytes values 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so something like this will happen. Okay, at a 0x80 in the memory, we have other addresses up here. You will be storing in the chunks of 32 bytes your values. Okay, so there will be value 1. Then you will have another chunk of 32 bytes. 32. This doesn't look like a bytes, right? So bytes. Then value 2. And on another chunk, you'll have more addresses here. You'll have a value 3. Okay, this will happen. Okay, so let's take a look. All right, so in order to see it, we need to jump into the next line of code. Let me go here. Now you don't need to click on to jump into the next breakpoint, but I just want to go to this line of 18. So just click here, step over the next line, here step over forward, click it a few times, 1, 2, 3, until we are down until we are on the return. Okay, let me click here a few more times. This is just allocating the space, doing some operations. Okay, maybe easier would be just simply click here on line 18 and just click here, step into next breakpoint. Yeah, let's click here, jump over next breakpoint like this, and we are here. And now when you will take a look at the memory, you can see how many things was created for you. All right, so you can see at a 0x80, that this is 0x80, remember, 32 bytes chunks, right? 16 bytes, 16 bytes, in total 32 bytes. So in this chunk, 32 bytes, we have value 1. In these chunks of 32 bytes, we have a value 2. In these chunks of 32 bytes, we have value 3. So basically, that's what is happening. Since we are specifying here, or we are actually not specifying anything, but our free memory pointer, when the contract is executed, there is an instruction push 40, push 80, ms store. This means store in the memory value 80 in the position 40. This is saying that our free memory pointer will be pointing at this address here. So whenever we are storing the new values, we will store the value, we will update free memory pointer to point at the new address, and we'll store another chunk of the data, 32 bytes, and another chunk of the data, 32 bytes. and it will return this test number value. Okay? That's what basically is happening, guys. Okay, we can continue with examples. Okay, let me stop debugging and let me think what example I would like to show you. Let's reassign free memory pointer. This will be interesting. So in assembly here, we don't need to load here actually anything. We don't need to store here anything, but we can reassign a free memory pointer to point at the new location. So we will give up of the location 80, and let's say we'll be storing it on the position 90. This will be interesting. So MS store is for memory store, okay? And we need to provide here a key value. Okay, so first position at which you would like to store in the memory, let's say 0x40, because that's a position where you are storing your free memory pointers locations. So at the 0x40, let's store not 0x80, that will be the same as it's by default, but let's store there 0x90, like this. Okay, and let's save it. We need to do the processes before. We need to compile, deploy, execute function, and then we can debug. Okay, so let's do it. Let's save it. Let's go to compiler, compile your contract, compile back here, clear it out. Let's put this in a trash, previous contract. Let's deploy. Here is a new contract. Let's provide here some value. Doesn't really matter which one. And let's click here on the test. So that will be sending transaction. And let's click here at debug. Now let's go here at the return line. So let's remove this previous breakpoint and let's go to return here. Make a breakpoint and let's jump into the breakpoint like this. Perfect. And now let's take a look at the memory. All right. So, okay, you can see 0x80 is empty, but at position 0x90 at the chunks of 32 bytes, you have now your data. So now you are storing by default at the position for a 0x90. When the value is stored, free memory pointer is updated to the next chunk of 32 bytes. So here is a 1, here is a 2, here is a 3, and that's all of your values you are storing. That's how it works, guys. Okay, maybe you're wondering, what is this question marks? This is actually decoded value. When you are providing your values, maybe some text in hexadecimal format, this will decode it for you, but there is nothing to decode now. We will be decoding, actually I will show you the example in the next lecture. This will be, again, AI lecture. What I would like to show you now is that you also can return from assembly code. You can return the values from assembly code. How you can do it? Okay, so let me stop the execution, stop debugging, and instead of this return here, I will remove it like this, and I'll write here assembly. All right, and we'll be returning from a value from here. You can do it like this. You can specify here returns uint, and it will specify here the name of the variable you would like to return uint data. Now we can access this data. So in assembly, I can access the data, and I can assign their value. Let's say we'll be loading value from the memory. So let's write here mload. We are loading from a memory. Let's provide here the position. So let's say 0x19. That will be first value. This should be number 1 here. That should return the value 1. All right. So like this. Perfect. Not semicolon. Data. This should return the data. So this should return the uint of the first item in the memory at the position 0x90. Now let's verify it, okay? Even without debugging, let's verify it. So let's clear it out. Let's compile. Compiled. Let's go deploy. Clear it out. Deploy. Let's send here any value. Doesn't really matter. Clear this out. Test. Click and open. And you should see here you are returning value 1. Okay, so that's the value that we are returning. That's the first item from our array here. Oops. Value 1. Okay, now what should I do when I would like to return value 2? So basically just provide here the new address of the value 2. Okay, so from the position 90, load 32 more bytes. Then it will be offset of new position. So that's basically what we can also say here. This will be position. You can do operation like this. I can write here exact address, but if I know that my free memory pointer is at 0x90, that's my initial position, and I know that my second item will be 32 bytes, will have a 32 bytes offset from this position, I can set here, I can write here operation add, you can access it here, add, and I can add together 0x80 and 0x20. 0x20 means offset of 32 bytes. So 0x90 position plus next 32 bytes is my next location in the memory, all right? So basically, if I have 0x90 chunk over 32 bytes, this is saying add me to this position 32 bytes. So let's get me the next address. It's 32 bytes further from the 0x90. So this will be the next address here, 32 bytes away. This is saying the 0x20. You can convert this 0x20 to decimal, and you will see it's a 32 bytes. Okay, actually here. So hex to decimal 0x20. Oh, what I'm writing 0x20 or just a 20. You can write convert 32. Okay, that's very simple to count these values because this position, as I was mentioning also many times before, 0x20, for example, the first positions are ones, so that's the value of 1, and the second one is 16. So 1 times 0 is 0, 16 times 2 is 32, plus that's a 32, all right? So that's how you can count it. Okay, perfect. I want to remove this. All right, guys, so now we know the position, so we should be able to load the second position, right? So that with this 0x90, 0x20, load me second position. This should do the job. So let's clear it out. Let's deploy, compile, and execute. So go here, compile. Go here, get this to the trash, deploy, and let's call here with a value of, doesn't really matter, 3 test, and here's a call. And here is a value 2. So that's the value returning the value 2. So from a memory offset 32 bytes from 0x90, there is a location where these data are stored. All right, guys, so that's gonna be it. We'll continue in the next lecture with more examples. Okay, and after that, we'll start coding again. So guys, I hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.